Welcome to The Weekly Trend, a podcast for navigating the markets through the lens of technical analysis. The Weekly Trend podcast is provided for educational purposes only and does not constitute any professional advice. Listeners should not act upon the information or content without first seeking advice from a registered financial planner.
Hey, welcome to a special edition, a special recording of the Weekly Trend podcast regarding the newly launched Adaptiv Select ETF, ticker ADPV. I'm David Zarling. I'm here with Ian McMillan, my right-hand man. We wanted to record this special edition because there's a lot of work that went into this project that we now know as an ETF. It was a labor of love. It's really a love story for our clients. Ian, where would you like to start on this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think like a lot of things in life, or at least a lot of new ventures, journeys, business decisions, you just don't know what you don't know. So I think there's, at least for me, there were a lot of preconceived notions of like, okay, I mean, we all know what an ETF is. You know, you see them
from a 30,000 foot level.
Right? I think I looked this up. I was telling Dan Russo, I looked this up the other day. When I graduated college, there were 600 or 700 ETFs. Now there's, I think, roughly 3,000. Right? So it's a massively growing vehicle that has become very popular. So I think along with that growth, there is, okay, I mean, right, what is an like, how hard can this be? I guess that's the best way to put it. Not that you don't understand, there's compliance and regulations, right? But, right, you have a strategy and then you just say, okay, this is an ETF and you get a ticker and then you're listed, right? I mean, but it's just so...
Yeah, from a 30,000 foot level, it looks like, you just flip a switch and here we have an ETF.
We have an ETF and now you can trade it, right? You know, and we go from point A to point Z.
I'm going to say something controversial here because I'm actually glad it's not a light switch. I think the effort that went into this
process
and the rules
make you have to be pretty serious about, do I think I have a viable
strategy?
I mean, even the business model of an ETF.
Yeah, for sure. We're coming off of the heels. You know, we may listen to this podcast 3 years from now. Someone might ask how did this all start, and we could point them to this. And we're coming off the heels of a pretty major event in crypto land with FTX. And there were really no rules for launching tokens and coins and things like that. But here we have launching an exchange traded fund requires passing a lot of compliance hurdles.
Yeah, I would say
and you know what? That's okay.
Genuinely a pretty regulated. There were organizations involved, like the IRS, that I had no idea.
Department of Labor
involved in the ETF creation process and have their own sets of red tape.
Things that they have some requirements on, and the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, is the overreaching party for launching ETF. And so we may end up talking a lot on here about the compliance pieces of this, but I want to reiterate that that's okay. In today's environment where we're seeing some serious moral hazards, I'm happy we had to go through the process we had to go through to get this done for our clients.
So I would say that there's the compliance around building the ETF that was absolutely necessary. Then there's the compliance after the ETF, which
we're still going to learn.
And you got to be careful here, right? Because they're going to have to review this podcast.
Yep, they're going to listen to this and they're going to tell us, yes, you can have this, and no, you can't have that. And who knows when this is being recorded on December 8th.
It's a big change.
This is being recorded on December 8th, 2022. We'll let those working in compliance through Quasar, our distributor, figure out what can and can't be involved from this podcast perspective. You know, I think if we avoid promissory statements, that would be a good start.
That's all I have written down. So that sucks.
We want to do this by the rules. That's the biggest thing is let's play the game let's play it well. Let's play it within the rules. And if we do that with a bona fide strategy, we'll be doing right by our clients. And I think that's really where this all starts from is, yeah, it's all good and dandy to launch an ETF into the ETF universe of 3,000 ETFs. Great.
Mm-hmm.
But really, this is first and foremost built for our clients here at Client First, Tax and Wealth Advisors, right? We manage assets for our clients here. We do financial planning, tax preparation, insurance, you name it. We are democratizing the family office here at Client First.
And I don't think that I don't think anyone was like, wow, an active ETF. I don't think the goal was she's going to get the brunt of it because of recency bias, but no one set out to be like, wow, I want to be Kathy. Like, I want to do that. I want to be the next Kathy and have.
You're saying Kathy Wood of ARK Investments.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was strictly because this was the best thing for our clients. And It does also give other people, I mean, yes, we get clients from outside of just financial planning who are interested in Adaptiv, but this is an easier vehicle for them, as well as advisors, right? We get approached a lot about third-party money management, to be honest. This is an easier vehicle for those that are interested also on an institutional level.
Correct. I'm going to say the name one last time. But one of FTX's slogans was built by traders for traders. And that actually kind of pissed me off because I truly view this ETF as built by advisors for their clients, and other advisors might like it because it's built by advisors.
Yeah, we also have a fiduciary duty.
Right. Yes.
I see. I don't think Sammy had one.
Yeah. And launching Adaptiv Select, ADPV, was a labor of love for our clients, because when you think about owning individual stocks outside of an IRA, there can be tax implications for that.
If there's heavy turnover.
And so the potential of having an ETF that is involved with individual stocks within that wrapper, the potential exists to reduce the tax burden for our clients, which is what we've wanted for a long time.
Yeah.
If it was possible,
I mean, not that there aren't distributions. God, I hope there's a massive distribution every year.
Right. Correct. We're not allowed to sit here and say it will 100% be tax efficient and tax beneficial to clients, but we know it's definitely in the step towards being potentially tax efficient and tax responsible for our clients, using individual stocks that are going to be held within it and using risk off metrics to protect those potential gains when there are market corrections. And we can get into the strategy
later on. Let's start with the timeline.
Yeah, I would say, a little history for Client First Tax and Wealth. Paul, Justin, and I bought the firm in 2016. We were at that time managing about 25 million. We had a team of 6. And many of those individuals are still with Client First today. But as we grew and we're providing solutions to our clients, that family office concept, we recognize, man, it would be really nice to have an ETF. But when you start to look into it, there are costs.
There's serious costs associated
with launching an ETF. And I would say that the ETF laws that were implemented or put in place in 2019, it didn't make it immediately cost effective, but it helped improve things. I think about 2020 as just being, I look back at 2020 because Ian, you joined us in July of 2019, and you were an answer to a prayer, you and Kevin joining the Adaptiv team, just because navigating the COVID crash and coming out of that, right? One of the fastest crashes we've seen from a high to a low in the history of markets. And prior to that, if you want to talk 2016, 2017, I was just doing it by myself. So to have your expertise, Kevin's expertise on board to take care of our clients during that period of time. And the reason why I bring this up is COVID was such a unique year, because not only are you managing risk and reward for your clients, but as a business, you're also navigating that for your clients and your teammates, right? Your employees, because in the first 6 months of that, as it developed from March of 2020 onwards, there was a lot of confusion on what should be done from a health standpoint, all those different things. Now we know things differently now, but getting through 2020 was big. Resources were more available in 2021. Investigations started beginning in July, I think, of being in, I hope Jason listens to this podcast, but I know Brad Drager was integral in this too, just arranging the meeting with me and Jason. Jason's at US Bank, just meeting with him and getting the landscape of what does it look like to launch an ETF? Who are we operating with? And he introduced me to Mike Castino over at US Bank. We had done some due diligence looking into other places, white label ETF places like Ultimus or Bank of New York Mellon. But in the end, chose US Bank. I think of January 2022 being a huge moment for you and me, Ian. I still remember that meeting in our office. Let's do this. Like, let's get this thing off the ground. And 11 months later and countless experts and hours later, the ETF is launched November 4th, and so many hands have touched it, just from a expertise standpoint, a review standpoint, compliance standpoint, and having you part of that process was just awesome. And so kudos to you and to, I think like Paul getting involved from a compliance standpoint, but the countless others. As I'm saying this out loud, I'm already thinking we're going to miss mentioning people's names because there's so many individuals that are involved in this successful launch. ADPV went live November 4th. We've reached it
Not
recently.
the original time frame, but I'm glad that it ended up being what it was. There's still a lot to learn.
Yeah, I mean, from going from ground zero of, like you said, a naive knowledge of what an ETF is to November 4th.
Or at least how they're built behind the scenes.
Yes.
Correct. And when you're building building and launching your first one, now, right, like the next time around, there will be lots of learning things that'll be able to be skipped.
Right, because there's economies of scale and knowledge too.
Yeah. I mean, we're not learning it all again for the first time and figuring out. You have one meeting and you're like, wait, now do we need to hire a lawyer that specializes in this? And it's just like, okay, right? So there's just so many, for lack of better, it's just a massive learning curve.
It is. And on our team, we're fans of saying, hey, let's step through the fog of the unknown. And that definitely was one of those things that we did. And I'm so happy I had individuals like you by my side as we learn these things.
Well, and I wanted to clarify, I don't say lawyers from a sense that like, oh, we're scared we'll get screwed over. It's more of like, I don't know. I don't specialize
in 40 Act law, in 1940
in
Act.
Legalese of ETFs. And when the SEC wants you to write up a 30-page document, yeah, we could probably figure that out and it would have taken us half a year. Or you can go find someone and say, okay, how do we do this?
And there's something to be said for getting what you pay for and having experts.
For sure.
Right? Because it applies to all things in life. And so you're going to build an ETF and not consult experts. Seems a little bit.
And you don't even know what experts you need at the beginning.
Correct.
You need a sub-advisor and you need someone to custody admin, right? You have your US Bank and you have your ETC. But all the other things, some they pick for you, right? But most of the others you get to, right? Then you got to come down to what's your exchange? Who's your market maker? Like we were talking about, your legal, who's going to help you respond to SEC feedback.
You think of, right, so Securities Act of 1940 really pertains to this particular vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
When you're
SEC feedback at an RIA level, right? You get audited and that's one thing. But
that's under it's a different act. It's 1933, 1934 Securities Act. And here you've got the 1940 Act. So while we might be well versed in the compliance and complexities of running a registered investment advisor, launching an ETF requires another layer of compliance approval. And that's a good thing. Like, I want to reiterate that it's really important to know what rules you're operating under. And I think in the year 2022, that's more imperative than ever.
Yeah, for sure. And you don't want to spend the time and resources and energy creating it, launching it, and then getting tripped up, fined, whatever, because you missed some rule. There's something there was something you weren't aware of. And we've definitely found things that we can get this a little bit that I absolutely was not aware. If it truly was as simple, the creation process, as it takes a couple weeks to create an ETF, we would have broken so many rules.
Right.
So,
and that's why I'm so thankful for guys like Adam Smith and gals like Donna Barrett from US Bank or Tom Bausch from Godfrey and
Tom
Kahn.
is so amazing.
These are the experts in their field for launching the product, but then how to operate, being listed on exchange, and or the individuals from Quasar that help us, like you talked about the compliance that happens after. There's so many individuals and experts involved that do deserve to get paid because they're there to help us and guide us, and that's important. Or you think about just baskets, custom baskets, creations and redemptions, having experts like those at Exchange Traded Concepts or GTS,
For sure.
our market maker, ETC, our sub-advisor. It's important to have these different relationships to help carry things forward in an appropriate and an efficient way. It's mind-blowing to think of doing any of this without them. And so if they listen to this, huge thank you to all our strategic partners who helped.
Yeah, 11 months. I cannot tell you how many. I'm saying that to the wrong person. I can't tell you because you were on all of the meetings. We were all in them together.
Right.
But holy crap, every day.
I still remember
hours. And not saying we were on the phone for 8 hours a day and didn't look.
No. They were typically 1 hour rhythm.
Lots of posts. And we'll get into this. Calls to Australia, and it was just actually calls to Australia for a couple different things. But what an absolute journey! What an absolutely huge learning experiences. I will tell you that my respect for people that have created an ETF, people that have created multiple ETFs, so you look at the guys at
Roundhill, Cambria.
Yeah, look at what now going through the process once. Yeah, it's not something to scoff at. Not that I did at the beginning. It was just a lot more intense than I ever could have.
And they're putting products out there and they're in the public domain. So I get why some individuals would get critiqued. I understand it. However, also have a little humility when you engage in that discussion if you've never launched one. Right? Yeah. Because you can critique performance absolutely fine. This is America. We're allowed to share opinions and not get overly offended by them, but also recognize that individual or group of individuals put themselves out there and actually did the work, and they were in the Roosevelt arena, right? The blood, sweat, and tears and work that went into launching something that someone else didn't. So if you don't have one of your own, be very careful. Be very careful on how you approach others. Because
if you think it could be done better, hey, gather the resources and the AUM and do it.
Right.
Welcome to the arena. It's not, exactly. And I would say, I was having this conversation the other day. Being on the buy side, being licensed, FINRA, blah, 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 we are an RIA, we do have clients. That is certainly skin in the game. But I do think ETF takes it to a whole nother level.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot, it's
being out there.
It's a lot more transparent, publicly. For sure. Yeah, I would 100% agree, and that's why having a bona fide strategy is important.
You want to talk about the strategy?
We didn't get into this to launch another S&P 500 fund.
No.
Like another index. Well, we got into it because we wanted to own something that had the potential to have a positive impact on our clients tax efficiency wise. And at the same time, managing assets that matches the way we manage, which is active using technical analysis. And we hit brick walls as we were going down
I
that
think we
strategy.
started off, yes, definitely brick walls. And I think we started off with a good base concept of let's just own stocks that are outperforming and get rid of the others. That original number started off with 150. And I would say it was good.
You're talking about the original concept was let's own the best 150 stocks out of the S&P 500.
Yes.
And I don't want to get too far into the weeds on how we were making that calculation, only because there may be something there later. I don't want to leave that as a teaser or promising
but that was
to
the
anybody.
Original thesis, and it wasn't bad. I would say there's also you don't know what you don't know.
Well,
so,
I think one of the pillars at Client First from a planning perspective has always been, let's build a financial game plan and let's see if we can break it. What do I mean by break it? Test it under different scenarios to see where it doesn't work, because then you're building something that's anti-fragile, and that's important. In our process, talk about that, how we broke the original strategy in essence.
Yeah, so we broke it.
And that's okay.
And I would say actually, we had strategy, returns were good. So we decided to I would phrase it as we went to find someone to break it.
Correct.
That person would be, if you're in the CMT community, the trading community, if you are familiar with Nick Raj.
Guy's phenomenal.
So we went to Nick Raj, based out of Australia, and told him, do you think this is good? What do you think? Does this match up with, you run the same strategy in your system, does this match? So that led to finding some data issues, which led to another conversation with a firm out of Australia, Norgate. Got that all settled and figured out. Yeah, and went to Nick. And like I said, the strategy was good, but
in concept,
but it, I think he was right. It's not as good as it could have been.
And Nick, if you're a charter market technician, I really hope the CMT has him present again.
Yes. So we both saw him present in 2019.
And it's just so funny because as we were in the initial phase, when we had the conversation of we need to have someone look at this besides us, just because you know how you get myopic and you just,
it can't just be us two sitting around saying like, yeah, we're super smart, we figured this out.
You want to hand it off to other smart people. And it's fair to say Nick is, I know for sure he's smarter than me. I don't know about smarter than you, but he is.
He's definitely smarter than me.
And he's, when it
comes to this, and probably fish and deep
legit. He is legit. And I think about how patient he was with us.
Yeah, I think patient is a great way to put it.
Because we pushed back on some things that eventually Nick was proven correct through the process.
Yes, he was.
But he was just never a jerk about it. He was
never, and it was kind of like, I'm gonna let you guys figure out that you're wrong here.
It was very much an individual letting someone else fall off the horse in order to learn to ride the horse. He did a great job of that and helping us develop this strategy. Can't say enough about the guy, just because I think it's fair, Ian, to say, without his involvement of breaking the former strategy and helping us develop the current one, we don't know where we would be in the ETF process.
Yeah, I can't even begin to think of what where we would be, compliance would be done, but as far as the strategy.
Right. And I would say, if you're someone out there that's working on a strategy, and the reason why I want to do this is as a payback to Nick. Now, Nick has a cost, so I don't want you to think that you can just approach Nick and there's no cost. But if you're looking for a bona fide individual, an expert in systems,
to help you fine tune something,
yes,
right? Because that's what I would say. We didn't go to Nick and say, Nick, what should we do? We had a concept and it definitely needed to be tweaked.
Mm-hmm. I think it's fair to say that Nick's fingerprints are on this from his involvement in breaking the former strategy and helping us develop the current one. And so if you're someone out there who's got questions on the things that you're back testing and looking at from a data perspective, he's one individual that I would recommend.
Well,
to
and there
say,
were definitely times, I mean, early on where he would basically say like, you need to do this. And I'm like, Nick, are you sure? I don't know. And as you mentioned, I mean, he was proven right pretty much every time.
And so I just want to do well by him and just promoting him from a standpoint of it was a linchpin in the process. When you think about linchpins, what I mean is it's a critical linkage in the process. I think of him, I think of Godfrey and Com and Tom Bausch. I think of US Bank. There's just so many players in this that to give the impression that somehow this is just Ian and me is extremely, it would break my heart.
Yes.
So we're going to do our best as we continue to talk about this to highlight those individuals. Nick is definitely one of those, a mile marker for me in this process. I think about Godfrey and Con and Tom Bausch. I think of the whole US Bank team. I mean, how many emails back and forth with Adam Smith and how patient he was with us.
Oh my God. And I'm sure like just all the elementary questions that we had. I mean, clearly, 50 of those emails are going to be able to be skipped the next time we do this, but yeah, right. And you just don't know. I mean, right. You as this is a, Client First is a business. ADPV is a product. And you, like any business owner, any factory owner making a widget, like you want to make sure that you're doing it in a financially responsible way, that you're doing right by your clients along the way in every aspect. You don't want to get down the road after it's launched or whatever and say, oh gosh, I wish we would have asked that. I wish someone would have brought that up back in August when we were on those phone calls. We didn't think of that. And that's where you have the experts, because there's absolutely things we wouldn't have thought of. And how many meetings did we end with you asking, they would say, do you guys have any more questions? And Dave would ask, should we? Like, what questions haven't we asked that you're sitting there saying these guys should be asking that? And sometimes there weren't, but lots of times there were. So it goes back to that. There's no way you could do this. Where would we be if Paul hadn't decided to tackle the entire compliance aspect of it?
Right. I would say for him, his Nick Raj on his side is Tom Bausch.
Yeah, for sure.
Just from all these different linchpins that had to be in place, these critical linkages to keep the process moving forward.
Paul was basically trying to be a 40-act lawyer himself.
Right.
And that's 6 months, 5 months.
So credit to Paul for that. Credit to Tom and the Godfrey and Con team. But that's also Donna Barrett from US Bank. That's Adam Smith from US Bank. The administration
Patrick
team, Ryan
from ETC.
Yeah, Patrick from ETC. And now our Todd from the portfolio management team over at ETC. Jay made an introduction for us for our market maker. We met Reggie, and we liked meeting people. And there were people we met with from a due diligence standpoint, like the people from Virtu were fantastic.
Yeah, we met with lots of third party. Yeah, because you have to do. You can't just say, I met Reggie in Huntington Beach and he was great and that's it, right? That's also not doing right by your clients. You need to vet multiple people. It's easy to have fun in Huntington Beach, right? With a plethora of people. So that's not necessarily something to build a product off of.
You can't be one and done. You have to do your due diligence, talk to 2 or 3 that you've narrowed it down to, make a decision, and how often it was that a decision was made. And it was a difficult decision. But that's good, right? If you're in business and you're not making difficult decisions, you might not be doing your job well. And some of these decisions on selection.
Well, what month was it when we got to, and you and I were like, we're going to have we need to carve out an hour a day to sit down and go through this.
Probably.
And we did that for 5-6 months, 7 months.
Nope. And that's what it took to get the.
You're like, all right, let's go through the emails. What emails came in? What has to be responded to? Oh my gosh. And again, Paul was a huge part of that as well.
It's a big deal. Our selections of exchange traded concepts as sub-advisor, US Bank for custody administration and accounting, Series Portfolio Trust is part of that, compliance and oversight. Quasar is a distributor. Market Makers Global Trading Systems. The exchange we're on is New York Stock Exchange. Legal counsel's Godfrey and Con. I mean, there are so many people involved with this that are due thanks. I even think just like the U.S. Bank team, Lori Givens, like how often she kept us on track. Ryan Roll from a fund administration standpoint, Adam Smith, Donna Barrett. I've said their names before. Now Todd with ETC. It's a humbling experience because you're in a cross, right? Because these individuals are not just working on this, right? They're working on other ETFs at the same time. And so that they would give up their time to help our clients have an ETF like this is extremely humbling to me.
For sure.
It's incredible.
You want to talk about how it works?
Yeah, let's talk about how.
Let's want to get into the weeds on that. I mean, right? There's a prospectus out there.
There's a prospectus out there.
They're not that hard to find. I mean, it's maybe a minute on Google and you can figure it out.
ADPVETF.com.
Or you can go.
You can find the summary prospectus in the prospectus. But I think it's okay to talk a little bit about the strategy. I think it's okay.
The strategy, right? We are technicians. The strategy is built on technical analysis and the concept of momentum and the concept of relative strength, the concept of being involved in the strongest stocks, right? And it is 25 stocks when fully invested. With what makes it be fully invested or not. This is in the prospectus, so it's not a secret giving it away. It is the 200-day moving average, or technically the 5-day and the 200-day. And then below that, the strategy is in cash, or the closest we could get to cash, which is short-term T-bills.
We're actively managing risk or trying to, right? We have to speak in these terms. We are seeking to reduce risk when the 5-day moving average of something of the 500 largest stocks in the US, when the 5-day moving average is below the 200-day moving average on a Friday, which kind of highlights one of the key features of this ETF that takes a lot of work. Weekly. Can you talk a little bit about, this is a weekly process?
Yeah, so the fund, I think one of the big components of the fund, especially when you look at these quote unquote momentum funds, is how often are they reconstituting? And I want to use the word reconstitute specifically and not rebalanced.
Yeah, walk us through that.
So bigger fund like SPMO, I think it's rebalanced or changed up, reconstituted every 6 months. For me, that's pretty slow for a momentum strategy. I think a lot can happen over 6 months where there's some trends you would want to be avoiding and some trends you would want to be involved in. Some can do monthly. Again, I think for us, that's pretty tough. Those are pretty long-term trends. If you're rebalancing monthly, you're clearly trying to capture some multi-year trends, I think, which is fine. Just not necessarily, I think, the time frame we want to play in.
Well, I would say it goes back to the risk management part.
Yes.
Right, because while there might be an ETF that does try to use momentum for matching or beating its benchmark, one of the key features of this is also identifying when are we in an environment that is considered risk off based on the 5-day and the 200-day.
Mm-hmm.
If you wait 6 months to act on that correction, it would be too late. But even from a rebalancing standpoint, like let's say we're in an uptrend, your point is to allow a stock to stay within the parameters for 6 months can significantly impact things.
Yeah, or even like in a sector, a theme. This is individual stocks. I don't think that there's a ton of, there's a lot of sector level active management around relative strength and some good ETFs, some good products. I don't know of many individual stock, at least especially with the concentration that we have at 25. And yeah, so Monday, it is reconstituted every Monday at the open. So what does that mean? It does not mean rebalance. So at 25% or 25 positions, it does not mean that every Monday morning at the open, everything moves back to 4%. It's technically 3.9 in our ETF because we have 2.5% of cash to give us some wiggle room for things. but we allow those positions to grow. Reconstitution is simply just if a stock, right? Let's say 2 stocks are sold and total they equaled 6% of the portfolio. One was 4%, one was 2% of the portfolio. The 2 new stocks that get purchased are going to be at 3%. It's not like everything gets rebalanced and we start fresh. We're not trimming. That kind of defeats the purpose of momentum in our view.
Right.
Trimming.
Just look at the S&P 500 for that.
Yeah, trimming the leaders in your portfolio to constantly rebalance them back down to equal weight is kind of in the same concept, I would say, as selling your winners to buy more losers. We want to see these things run. And there's absolutely stocks that will stay in the strategy for months, even years on end. The multi-year ones are pretty rare. It definitely has happened, and I'm sure will happen in the future. But for sure, I mean, there are stocks that the ETF will hold for months and months at a time. I would say on average, there's about 1 to 2 stocks that are replaced a week.
Right. We've run the data on that. Obviously, we can't talk about all the back testing. The SEC doesn't allow us. We're not even allowed to say.
All right. And
it's
that was
really
another choice we made, Dave. How about the whole, and we didn't cover this in the first part, the whole, do we make this an index or not?
Right.
We did go down that rabbit hole. We spent a lot of time at the 11th hour decided no, which the con on that was from a marketing and advertising perspective, you cannot share the back test. So,
and we're comfortable with that.
And we're comfortable with that. I mean, there were many other reasons that decision was made. Namely, the biggest one is the index would have started in 2006. And we just did not feel that was an appropriate enough time frame. Our back test goes back way much further than that. So coming out publicly with a back test or an index that started in 2006 really wasn't. We'll let the strategy be its own. I mean,
right.
Its own index.
We'll let performance be performance, and people can make up their own mind.
Yep.
On whether they want to own that or not. And we're confident, otherwise we wouldn't have built this, that 3 years from now we can have another conversation about 3-year performance that is just a peek inside of what the potential is, right? But of course, past performance is not indicative of future returns, and that's always going to be the case. But back testing wasn't important. I mean, it's what led us to break the previous strategy and implement this version of the strategy, which is simply attempting to own the 25 strongest stocks ranked on momentum and relative strength within a universe of 1,000 large cap stocks. Keeps us liquid, right? We're not stuck in some illiquid names.
It's liquid just a ranking system. This is not some curve fitted ideology where we got in there and tweaked moving averages and you're like, oh, we can get it. If we move this from a 50-day moving average to a 47, we can get an extra 50 bips a year on performance. I mean, it's strictly a ranking system based on momentum, like you said.
Right. Are we in a broad market uptrend or are we in a broad market downtrend? Again, that's laid out in the prospectus, defined by the 5-day and the 200-day. If we're based on that information, that definition in an uptrend, we're going to attempt to own the 25 highest ranked momentum and relative strength stocks out of a universe of 1,000. If we're in a defined downtrend using those parameters, we're going to own T-bills and cash. Let's not overcomplicate things. It's attempting to seek and get alpha from those 25 highest ranked names in uptrends, meanwhile protecting from drawdowns. And if you think about that happening within an ETF, there's some power behind that, right? Because clients don't have to, the ETF doesn't have to be bought and sold. It's a wrapper that's happening in this process. And so you can hold the ETF and not incur all sorts of tax implications unless it's on your time frame, right? I'm not here to tell you can't sell ADPV, but I'm here to tell you that if your client owns it, you can sell it on your terms, knowing that risk management's taking place within inside of it.
It is. I think it'd be very hard to come to market with some type of strategy that had similar, drawdowns to the S&P or some clause did. And I think what Pacer has done with PTLC is really a great concept. You own the S&P or you don't. I think we're taking that a step further. We're also choosing from the Russell 1000. So that's the pool we are playing in. That was another thing that changed throughout the process. I don't know if we mentioned that earlier, but so we are choosing from the 1,000 largest capitalized stocks, and the Russell 1000, that's strictly what it is. It's based on market cap. S&P has some, right? Those guys get to choose what goes in and what goes out. I wouldn't say that they're the best with their timing, right? When did they add Tesla? I think that's a great example. When did something like Tesla get added to an index like the S&P? Well after it had its.
You're highlighting a great example of, we know that the next leaders inside the S&P 500 10 years from now, there is a probability that those come from outside the 500 that are in there now. So you've got 500 US large cap stocks in the S&P 500. The next 500 after that, there's a high probability that something from in that group is going to get itself inside the S&P 500 club. And we didn't want to exclude those from the process because that's where some of very strong momentum characteristics come out of that next 500. And so it would have been silly to exclude those out of our process. And so we didn't.
No.
So I'm excited in the current environment.
Really excited.
It's pretty simple. As of last Friday, 5-day moving average, below the 200-day moving average. The ETF is owning T-bills and cash. Really simple.
And one thing I'd like to point out, right? When we started this, like truly sat down and said, okay, like we are going to do this in 2020, literally 11 months ago in January. We said we're going to launch an ETF. You don't get to pick what type of market you launch in. Do I wish we were in a bull market? Kind of. Do I wish we had launched this before the bear market started, right? I wish we had launched this last November. I guess. I don't know. You don't get to pick what launches. So you run the strategy, and whatever the strategy says on launch day is where you jump in there. I think it's kind of like trying to jump in like a fast moving river. Right? You're never going to perfect it, but you have your strategy and you jump in, and the rapids will take you to wherever it was meant to be. Maybe we take another leg down and we continue to stay in strategy or in T-bills in the strategy. Or maybe stocks move higher here in the next week or two and we get fully invested. But there's been a few comments about being in T-bills and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's what the strategy says. So.
And it's about staying disciplined to the process.
Yeah.
Right. You don't go outside the strategy. You stay right because A, that's a huge compliance issue. B, you're not doing well by your clients if you do that. The strategy is a strategy. Performance will be performance. People can make up their own minds whether they want to be part of that or not. They should be using the prospectus to help make that decision, right? Because it defines there's risks, right? There's risks involved with investing. Anybody who buys ADPV is pushing that button on their own. They're adults. Do your due diligence.
Yeah. We're putting it in I'll tell you that. If you're an advisor, this is something that we are doing. Unlike some other RIAs, large RIAs out there, they create products for marketing schemes.
Yeah, this is not a marketing scheme.
Zero of their own client money in this. We'll have a substantial amount of our own clients invested in this because it is what we think is best.
Right. And so if you're a client listening to this, you've started to see this being put into play in portfolios. And like Ian said, it's what we believe is in the best interest. Being able to own what we believe are the strongest 25 stocks in uptrends and preventing as much as we can drawdowns when markets are in a downtrend.
Yeah.
Whether someone from the outside wants to buy it or not, that's great. And we're going to do future things.
Yeah.
Again, we're still learning, whether that's blog updates or podcast updates or webinars, we don't know.
I'm certainly excited to find out what people want in regards to those things.
What do you mean as far as information and stuff like that?
Yeah, as far as information. What do people enjoy? How would they like our thoughts and updates on the ETF to be delivered. And it might be different for different audiences.
Right. And so we're really excited for our clients. If you've taken the initiative, if you're not a client here at Client First and you've taken the initiative to buy it on your own, we appreciate that. That's awesome. It's built for you too. That's why, it's in the marketplace. As far as how we provide information in the future, probably looks something like a podcast update with, here are the changes that happened, right? Because it's a transparent process. It's not like any of this is going to be hidden. By Tuesday and Wednesday, you'll be able to see on the site the holdings. These are all compliance related items that are necessary and appropriate. We should be able to talk about some of those things. Now, the timeliness of how those things getting approved for distribution for you to listen to or read, we don't know yet.
We will work on that. We will build a process right? But I think there's going to be a learning curve there too.
Yeah. And so be patient. If you're like, oh, I want more information, we'll get there. But it's also important knowing how simple yet appropriate from a risk management standpoint, what we believe anyway, the strategy is that's happening within ADPV, the Adaptiv Select ETF. We're excited about it. We're excited to go to market with it. Even excited to see how the Lord blesses it 3 years from now when we have some performance underneath our wings, more discussions on what's changing within the ETF as the market evolves. We'll adapt. That's why it's called Adaptiv. So Ian, thank you to you. A lot of work went into this.
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
Exciting year. That was an exciting year. Tiring in a lot of aspects. It was a tiring process, but in a good way.
I really don't know. I'm having one of those moments where, because I'm really excited about 2023 as well. This was a very productive year in a hard market environment.
Yeah.
So,
and there's a lot of people that get said, I don't even know what's going on with this market. Should we just put this off until the dust is settled and we think we're back in a bull market? No. What if you said that in June and we're here in December and the market's at 55, S&P's at 5,500, and you're like, okay, well, I guess we should get back on that ETF horse.
That's a more than fair point, Ian, because I should highlight my business partners, Paul and Justin, did not flinch. They knew this was the right thing to do. They brought the resources to bear of Client First onto this project. And I give them a lot of credit because how much meddling was there, Ian?
Like none.
So think about that. This baby, this Client First team and family and clients that's been built.
Yeah, I'd say absolutely zero from that standpoint. We didn't tell Paul how to respond to compliance emails.
Right. I'm just saying I give them a lot of credit and appreciation for letting us do our thing.
It's a lot of checks to write to them. I mean, and you're also a business owner as well. So it's not like it was the two of them. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of resources to then sit by and watch someone else use and put to work. And you don't really get to say, from the strategy perspective.
Right. Genuine good questions, but no meddling, no trying to control. And I think about that, if the roles were reversed, that's a legit discipline to be able to say, you guys go carry this forward. This is a major, major chapter. Write this chapter. This book is a best-selling book and you get a chapter in it. And I'm not going to mess with you. That is to me, the more I sit back and think about that, I give a lot of credit to Paul and Justin for having that attitude, for trusting E and I to carry this forward. So thank you for that, guys. And thank you for you, Ian, and your involvement, and really everybody's involvement. We could just go through a list of names, and maybe we will. Maybe there'll be a podcast we do where we bring back some of these names and just talk about them. But this was important. It was important to get some of this information out now. This won't be the end. This is just the beginning. As we said on a different podcast, the launch was just a touchdown. It's not the game. It's not the season. There's more to do. Anything else before we close this one up?
I think I'd also say thank you to Dan and Kevin for this creation. The ETF has also, there's things where it's added responsibilities to their plate, right? And they've been totally on board. They're excited. Everyone's excited. So
teamwork makes the dream work, man.
Yeah. either we'll take another leg lower and stay in T-bills, and that'll be fine, or we'll be fully invested.
Yep.
Here soon.
Excited either way. So we hope you guys appreciated listening to this, getting a little bit of insight into the work and the resources that went into launching ADPV, the Adaptiv Select ETF. Simply an ETF that tries to take advantage of momentum and relative strength and 25 great names when markets are in an uptrend, when broad markets are in a downtrend. Trying to reduce that drawdown risk is the main objective of the ETF. We do think we'll have some things in the future regarding webinars. You can go to adpvetf.com for more information, and you should if you're considering investing, because investing involves risk. I'm sure there'll be disclaimers added to the end of this, Ian. Appreciate you. Thanks for doing this with me.
Really appreciate you as well, Dave. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus, available at adpvetf.com. Read carefully before investing. ADPV is distributed by Quasar Distributors, LLC. And Quat.